Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of the Impact Meets Innovation podcast. Now, today's guest, one of my dear friends who has been a true inspiration in many facets of my life, the founder of Day One Marketing and the Subject Matter Experts Academy, a family man who really lives his life to impact others. I'm so excited. Evan Dawson, welcome, my guy.
Hey, thanks so much, Chris. This is a huge honor. I have been following you for years, and the things that you are doing are just spectacular. So this is going to be fun.
Thanks, brother. So, the way I like to do these podcasts is I want to start what is most near and dear to you. And for knowing you now for almost 5 years, right? 5 years. I think what's most evident in your life is your family. So that's where I think we should start today. So you're a family man. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? And it's funny enough, I stumbled upon a YouTube video of you asking your kids what you do.
Yep.
And so tell me a little bit about your family dynamic with your business. Obviously, I know you have an office at home. So just tell the viewers what that's like.
Oh, man. So many good questions there. So we'll start with the most recent one. My office. So I am in a basement office. We built a custom home a couple years ago. Worst time in history to build a house. We started right before the pandemic. It was supposed to be like a 9-month build, and it took 2.5 years. So we finally got in it. And yeah, I'm downstairs, and the kids, I really don't hear them, which is nice. And they know the rule. Knock lightly on the door. And if daddy's on a call, I won't say anything to them. If I'm not on a call, I'll say, hey, come on in, and they can come in. But yeah, we have a great working relationship here at the house. I didn't know how it was going to be. I worked retail for many years where I was out of the house most of the day, right. Gone early in the morning before anybody got up, back home just in time to see everybody go to bed. That was no fun. But I did wonder how this dynamic was going to work, and it's working out great. I love it. I'm not wearing pants right now, which is awesome.
That's great. Me either. Wonderful.
Perfect.
It's funny you say that about the home office, right? Because I had a home office for the first 4 years. I just got into an actual office by the past 9 months because I have 2 dogs at home. And I know you've done calls with me that I've been at home, and it's you want to be at home because you want proximity to your wife and your family, and it's the comfort of your own home, obviously. But there is the element of the focus aspect. And that is something where I've definitely struggled with. And my focus has increased since I've been out of the house. How is that balance for you?
It's been good. And simply because we also homeschool. So the kids are never gone. They're always here, or they're, maybe at their co-op field trips and things. But most of the time they're here. And so everybody just kind of knows their part and their role and what they should be doing at certain times of the day, which is nice. And then we always, right next to this office, something that I am very excited about still is we have a home theater. And so we'll do movie nights as a family. And I love that. And this digital marketing is what has allowed that to happen. Just having everything, being able to be closer to family, spend more time with them is super important to me. And we have 3 kids now. Our lives are about to change drastically, I think, in a good way, because we are starting to foster. And we just finished all of our training classes. We just had what's called a home study, where somebody will come out to the house, make sure we have the fire extinguishers in the right places, medicine locked up, all that. So we are in the process of just waiting on a phone call to see the kids that we're going to be able to foster.
So I'm going to revisit the fostering thing because we've talked about this before, but I want to go back to the homeschooling aspect. So since my wife and I got married, the debate and conversation around our education system and how we want to, have an upbringing for our kids one day, we'll talk about, your wonderful wife, Ashley, in a moment, but specifically, what was that decision for you guys? What made you say, this is what we want to do? What were you hoping to accomplish with your kids with that model opposed to traditional school? Walk us through that a little bit.
For us, it was an easy decision for a couple reasons. One is my wife, Ashley, was a teacher. She has a degree in degree in something, some sort of educational degree. And
educational teacher.
Yeah, she's a teacher. She's a first grade teacher. Yeah. Funny enough, I proposed to her dressed as a knight, riding a white horse up to her recess of her first grade class. And yeah, thankfully she said yes. It was so funny, man. We had these
Yeah,
kids. These kids
that's
were
gonna be a
yelling at me,
thumbnail.
and they were these kids are yelling at me saying, "Why are you wearing tennis shoes?" Because I'm supposed to be this knight. And then this is the wild part. When I took her, I put her on she got to finish out the day, but the kids didn't know that. So I proposed to her. I get her up on the horse. We're riding off, into the sunset, just around the parking lot of the school. And the kids start bawling because they loved Ashley as a teacher, and they thought I was taking her forever. They just all over crying. It was hilarious.
That's great. So all right, so she came from an educational background, so that made that an easy decision. What else played into that dynamic?
We wanted to have a say in how our kids are led and how they're taught, the values that we want to instill. And, not to get too political here, but that is not being done in society right now. Like, school has changed tremendously, even since you and I were in, first, second, third, fourth grade. The stuff that they're learning now, the stuff in the books or the stuff that's not in the books anymore, it's just, we wanted to be able to speak into our kids' lives and teach them the things that would correlate with our values. So that was
you unfiltered, right? You wanted them to have, well, I should say unfiltered in a way where you guys can kind of extend what your values and virtues are right into them, with having them not having a biased approach to it is really what you guys were hoping to accomplish, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And the kids have their own choice. Like, they can make the decision as they get older. My kids are, what are they now? They're 12, 10, and 7. As they get older and they want to go into the school system, maybe in high school that might happen. That's completely fine with us. But for right now, while they're young, we want to be able to lead them well. We want to be able to teach them up too. I mean, I remember school growing up, you learn some stuff, but like, my kids are learning I would be willing to bet at a much faster rate than a normal school system, because we're very focused. And we have some blessings in disguise here. We've got my father-in-law and mother-in-law. They live on the same family compound, basically, is what it is. And he'll come over in the morning. He was an engineer for years, so he's teaching them math. And I mean, I'm not shy to say this. My kids probably already are better at math than me because he's teaching them from an engineer's mind, and he gives them all the time to do that. So there's pros and cons to everything. My thought, because I was always in, normal school my whole life.
Right.
I went to high school, college, university, all that stuff, right? But I had a stigma for homeschool. I thought, are these kids just going to grow up weird? Are they not going to be able to know how to be social with other kids? That's not the case at all. We have something called a co-op. They get together with it's probably 100 kids in the area, more than probably what they would be in the normal class every week, every Thursday. And they go on field trips. They have other homeschool teachers teaching them different subjects. I mean, my daughter's doing arts and crafts. My sons are doing sports. They have a football team. I was at a football game. My son won last night at the Fayetteville Tigers. It was awesome. And it's a homeschool league, and there's no difference in a normal football team. It's completely not what I thought about homeschool. It's awesome. I don't know if it's the same way around the country, but here it's great.
That's interesting. Because I'm, me and my wife have had conversations, of course, about the education system, what is being taught, what isn't. I think my horizons have run definitely being an entrepreneur and having, because I want my kids, when I have kids, I want them to learn at the style that they learn from, right? It's not everyone fits into a box. And that was one of the things that me and my brother, my siblings are really smart, but we all learn differently. My brother was not good in school, right? But that doesn't mean he's not smart. He just learns differently. And so I think when you empower people, specifically kids, you give them options and you kind of allow them to dictate how they're going to grasp information. I think it benefits them as adults, and especially as a teenager, right? And you also, like you said, get the component of you get to kind of nurture them the way that you and your significant other want to. You can prevent certain things that they see and learn. And I think that's all part of it as well. So that's really bad. You and I never really had this conversation in depth, and I was interested in that. Cool. So listen, you're running an online business. You're in the office a lot. There's a hero upstairs right now, okay? And that person is someone who I've met and is a tremendous person. Your wife, Ashley. Now, I also stumbled upon in my due diligence prior to this podcast, there was an ad in the newspaper for her, wasn't there?
Yes, there was.
And it almost looked like a Chip from Chip and Joanna. You know, the country jeans, the tucked in shirt, the big buckle belt. You know, that is something. That's something. You are a creative gentleman.
What it actually was, you know, I am a hopeless romantic still, even with, 13 years of marriage.
Okay.
That was from the movie The Notebook. I don't know if
I'm very familiar. Okay. I personally like romantic movies as well. So all the Sparks movies I've seen, right? I've seen them all. And it's funny because my wife only watches them here and there. She isn't like, she thinks they're cheesy or whatever. Yeah. And
she's watching the war movies. You're watching the chick flicks.
Yeah, well, she actually, I love war movies, and she is like hit and miss about those too. We have very different types of interests. But anywho, continue based on what you were saying. So it's a Nicholas Sparks, from the Notebook.
There's a scene in the Notebook where the girl is about to marry this other guy. She has her wedding dress on for a fitting, and somebody hands her a paper. And the main character, Noah, she sees this picture of him in front of this house that he built for her. And she basically passes out. So it's a very romantic scene in that movie. And so when we built this house together, and we went through so much, just a bunch of drama with this house, right before we moved in, I had a photographer come out, and I wore the same thing that Noah was wearing. We had basically the same pose and everything. I had them take a picture, and then I sent it to a local paper with, basically the background. It was printed, published, and I got to present that to her Christmas morning a couple of years ago, and it was good. Yeah. So some good water work on that one.
That's hilarious. Yeah, you can tell that the love you guys have for each other is really amazing. For you, right? You guys have been together for a while. How long exactly?
I have known her now for more than half my life. We met in a ministry school.
Okay.
Called Master's Commission. Yeah, long time ago.
So you guys have known each other. You guys have been through a lot, right? You guys have now 3 kids, multiple businesses, built your dream home, all that jazz. So when there was that evolution, you went from corporate America, which we'll talk about in a few moments, into what you have now. Give some tips for a marriage that is going to have multiple layers to it and multiple, there's going to be many rebirths, as you can say, right? Like there's going to be a lot of new things coming. You're a different person, I'm sure, than you were in corporate America. Like just shed some light on how that dynamic still is what it is today.
If I even hint at the fact that I'm some pro husband, wherever my wife is in this house, she'll hear it and she'll come down here and be like, hey, buddy. not yet.
It's all right. It takes 2 to tango.
Yeah. So the best advice I think I ever got, I know we probably have talked about this before because I don't mind sharing it because it made such an impact in my life, was the world will tell you, you go 50% of the way, the other person comes 50% of the way, you meet in the middle, and everybody wins. And that is not how marriage is, because all sorts of things happen throughout the day, throughout the year. There's ups and downs. You need to be going 100% of the way, not expecting anything in return from the other side. That is the definition of true love. So when I put myself in the position to go 100%, whether or not Ashley reciprocates, like, that's not my issue. Like I have no control over that. I just have control over my actions, over my thoughts. And so when I do that, those are the times that the other side, not that you're doing it for this, but the other side does reciprocate. And they're like, wow, like I really feel loved. And there's a book that is, it's called Love and Respect. It's very good. So find that online, whoever's watching this. If you have issues in your marriage, Love and Respect is amazing. There's also a video series training on that. But men, we feel love when we are respected. It's just how we're wired. Women will feel love in different ways, and they need to feel loved by whatever their love language is. That's another book that we went through. A study, The 5 Love Languages, is great. And her love language is quality time. So I could shower her with as many gifts on the planet. She doesn't care. That is not what does it for her. It's spending time with her. So I have to go out of my way because mine is not that. Mine is physical touch and words of affirmation. If she says, "Oh man, you're doing such a great job. You're providing for our family," like that. I mean, shoot, I don't. She could have given me a gift. I wouldn't even have seen it. Like that's the main thing. And so, being able to love each other the way that we receive love as individuals is very important.
Yeah, that's really powerful, man. And I know we've touched on that previously. Myself, I've been married a little over a year now, and the things that I've learned in 1 year, I could never imagine, right? Because when you get married, right, like you're on this ultimate high, and then you go through a honeymoon phase. And me and my wife, we've been together for like a good amount of time now, right? Like we're approaching 7 years, so we know just about everything about one another. When I first met her, I was working at a taco shop, okay? Literally making tacos, okay, when we met. And I was working part-time for my dad's construction company. And now where I am is I have changed so much. I think for the better. She could argue sometimes, but I think there's a growth that happens and your relationship dynamic changes and the expectations change. And I think it's easy to point the finger when things are challenging and you're like, well, oh, it's what you're doing or what I'm doing. And I think the moments where we've came back together through adversity was when that 100% was given with no expectation. And no expectation is I think the hardest part about it, right? Because everyone always, I think most people, right, expect something in return, whether that's in a marriage, in a friendship, whatever. And I think when you have an open heart and you're just giving, I've seen in business that comes back to you, right? It will come back. And I think it's just people should work on their marriage just as much as they work on their business or their fitness or their health, right? All that's all encompassing. And that's something over the past year or so I've tried to take a cognizant approach to and really putting the work in. Like it doesn't just, a good, healthy marriage doesn't just happen, right? Yeah. It doesn't just, you have to work at it. And that's something that, me and my wife are really putting emphasis to. And it's been really good lately.
When's the last time you made her a burrito?
A burrito. See, it's that's a great story. I hope she watches this. So she eats sandwiches or tacos or burritos in a very weird way. Okay. So
I hope she watches it too.
I hold my burrito like this, right? Like, and I just eat it, right? She holds it like with one hand and like does it like this. So she always said, and I have always asked her and joked with her, I'm like, why do you eat your burrito like that? And she says, so it doesn't fall out. Well, it doesn't fall out if you roll it properly. So the running kind of mockery that we have is when we do eat tacos and burritos and we make them from home and we don't order out, I usually offer to fold her burrito for her. Okay. But sometimes she allows me to do it, sometimes not. But it's just this funny back and forth that we have with one another. It's funny.
That's great.
Speaking of tacos and burritos, I'm just going to add this in. What is your favorite meal?
Well, we'll start because I'm thinking about tacos. The double decker they used to have at Taco Bell, I loved it because it was a hard taco with a soft taco shell outside of it. And we have Taco Tuesdays. I know it's just like the stereotypical, I guess 60s family, but we do Taco Tuesdays and we make double deckers and I love it. That's my favorite.
That's great.
Probably not my favorite meal, but definitely my favorite type of taco.
Love that.
Yeah, love favorite that. Meal. I'm just going to go old school cheeseburgers. Now I know you and I have experienced some, Wagyu cheeseburgers and things that are amazing, but it's hard to get a cheeseburger wrong, but when you get one right, you're like, oh, this is great.
Oh, yes, for sure. I am a sucker for a good juicy cheeseburger. All right, let's get back to the formula here. So I want to talk about faith for a minute. Okay, maybe longer than a minute. So for you, have you always been really big into the church and that world, or is that something that happened in your teenage years? Like, when did that kind of take shape in your life?
So I am Jewish by birth. I grew up Jewish. I grew up going to synagogue. I grew up having to wear a suit every Sunday as a kid and hated it. And I
Okay.
just knew like, oh man, this is the worst. Well, I always had a relationship with God, the
Okay.
God of the Bible. I can remember at a very young age just talking to God, walking down the sidewalk, probably like 5, 6 years old. And there was always a relationship there. But it wasn't until I was 15, not to draw this story out, my dad had a couple of different job transfers. He was retail his whole life, and that's what I grew up doing is retail. Well, he was moving us quite a bit in my teenage years. We had to move to Daytona Beach when I was 13, and then we had to move up to North Carolina. And so I'm switching schools all the time. When we went down to Daytona, there was a school incident, there was a knifing at this school that they put me in, and like, whoa, like we don't want any of that. Like let's take them out, let's put them in a private school. And so they had two choices. They gave me the choice. It said it was like a Jesuit school for just boys. And I mean, I'm like 13, 14. Like I knew
That's what
girls
I went
existed at
to.
that
I
point.
went to all boys Jesuit school.
Yeah. Well, then the other option was just this Church of God that had girls at the school. So I'm like, I want to go to the one with the girls, right? So they sent me there. And for about 6 months, I heard the gospel and it just like went over my head. I really wasn't listening too deeply. I can remember the teachers would pray in class, and I thought that was odd. And I would just be like throwing paper airplanes. I was not a great student. So on the last move up into my high school years, I was 15 and I'm sitting down and I filled out this piece of paper that the principal, has all these new students come in because he actually cared that the people coming into this Christian school were not like ruffians, right? Like just hoodlums.
Yeah, sure.
So when I show up at this school, because that happens a lot, like parents will just send their troubled kids to a Christian school to try to like help them. That doesn't help the kids that are at that school. Like it just kind of mars the water. So he didn't want his school to be like that. So I'm going in here and I remember he had this really long questionnaire. So I'm filling it out to the best of my ability. I walk into his office and I see my questionnaire on his desk and it had all these red marks and notes and stuff. And I'm like, oh crap, like my parents are going to kill me if I don't get into this school. One of the questions that was asked was, who are your three role models? And I put my grandfather, Snoop Doggy Dogg, and Dr. Dre. Okay, and the sad thing was at the time in my life, I was not kidding. And I'm like, he'll let me in. I put my grandfather. Like, that's a good answer, right? So he looks at me, he takes this thing, doesn't even mention anything. He just pushed it aside. He's like, Evan, if there was a sniper outside right now were to shoot you dead, do you know where you would go? I'm like, low key, like looking out the window, like, and I just thought about that question. Nobody had ever asked me a question. It was such a weird question, right, from this school principal. And I just said, no, not really. So he said, would you like to know? I said, sure. Who wouldn't want to know that? So he takes his Bible out and he takes me through what is called now that I know it's called Romans Road, where he takes me through these scriptures in Romans. And I can't explain what happened to me that day because, Jews believe in the Bible. They just believe in the Old Testament, right? They don't believe that Jesus was Lord. They don't believe in the New Testament at all, right?
Right.
They're still technically waiting for the Messiah. So when the principal showed me in the New Testament how Jesus fulfilled the Old Testament prophecies, this huge light bulb inside, outside of me, everything went off. And then he asked me, he said, hey, would you want to ask Jesus into your heart to forgive you of your sins, all this stuff. So right there in a principal's office, when I'm 15 years old, I accepted the Lord as my savior. And I've, been a Christian ever since. That sat not so well with some of our family members. And then others, I'm very blessed now. My entire immediate family from growing up are now Christians. My family now, my wife and I, like I said, we met in ministry school.
Yeah.
And one of the main things that, I'm looking forward to doing with my family is mission trips overseas and things like that. So,
yeah, that's interesting because I'll share my experience. So I went to an all boys Jesuit school. Now I went to a Catholic elementary school. Then I went to a public middle school. Okay. That was like Not
Night and day.
night and day. And then because I wanted to do more and be around, I think a different group of people. I went to an all boys Jesuit school. Now, those all three are very different dynamics for sure. But I'm thankful I did go to the high school I did. It gave me a lot of perspective. Gave me a lot of perspective. My mom says often to me, "Don't forget where you came from," and that is kind of like ingrained in my head. And so I think back to those moments when I was in that school, and I was definitely the odd one out. Right? My parents. I didn't have much money. I rode the short cheese bus to school while they were rolling up in mommy and daddy's BMWs and Lexuses, and I didn't fit in. But what I didn't know is I had the same opportunity they did, right? And that was something that always stuck with me as like, I don't care how I got to school today, right? But I had the same opportunity, and because it was a prestigious Jesuit all boys school, college, like you going to a 4-year college was the standard, right? There was no, I'm not going to college. Like that was the type of school, and all the Ivy League schools were really were constantly in there showing us stuff. And so it was a school where you're supposed to go do something. And I think that shifted my mindset of like what my goals and ambitions were. And that kind of unlocked something in me. Now, I don't know what that was at the time, but I knew that I was going to do something big, and I wanted to impact people, right? But I had the same opportunity for them, and I took that very seriously. Is like we have, whether you're the son of a CEO or not, I think I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity. And that was the first opportunity I was given in life, I think, and I try to take advantage of it. So with you, let's talk about people that don't always have an opportunity, right? You mentioned mission trips. I know that's something that you're really passionate about doing in the future with your kids and your wife. Share a little bit about that. Like what exactly does that look like? What do you want it to look like? And what do you want to teach your kids about that?
Yeah, I have a huge heart for missions. The first summer after giving my life to Christ, I was, 16, and we went to Freeport, Bahamas. Now, when people think Bahamas, they think, oh, it's vacation time. Well,
sure.
There's a lot of places in the Caribbean. It's not a vacation for these people that live there. So we went there, and I'll never forget the first night. There was this old rundown school that we stayed in that was dilapidated. It was not a working school at the time. And they asked, which rooms everybody wanted to sleep in. There was one room that didn't have any beds. They just had mattresses up against the wall. And when we pulled one of the mattresses down, the entire wall started moving. It was cockroaches everywhere. It was crazy. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to be a missionary, I might as well suffer. I was like, I want that room. And it was, I don't know what I was thinking, but I just wanted the experience, right? So I'm sleeping on this table where all night long I hear this like this little buzzing because these cockroaches kept crawling on me in the night. So I wake up thinking like, I'm a missionary now, and something just shifted in me. And for the next few years, I would go on every mission trip that was available to me from my youth group at church. I went with another youth group at another church to different places. I have been to over 30 countries now on missions. I've spent almost a year of my life in East Africa. Naweza kusema Kiswahili. I actually went for 6 months to learn Swahili because I love the culture over there. Seeing how the other side lives, quote unquote, the third world countries. When people go over to those countries, they just assume that they're going to go over and bless those people. Like we're, the Americans, and we have all the money and all the power in us, and we're just going to go over and we're going to help these people. If you've ever been on a mission trip, you realize very quickly that's not what happens. Now, yeah, you can help them, and you can, do puppet shows and teach them about Jesus and give them candy and all that stuff. But how you're changed internally when you go overseas is unfathomable what happens inside. And that's what I want for my kids, for, my kids one day. Like I want them to experience that, because right now, our culture, our kids, they're doing this all day long, right? I mean, it's very hard to get them away from that because it's just the world that we live in. Well, you take them somewhere with no electricity for a couple weeks, no internet. Watch what happens. watch the eyes open and the hearts open. It's wild. It's a great experience if you've never been.
So I think I want to bring up a controversial topic, I think, for a moment, because I want to hear you touched on it a little bit, right? But we're, white men in America perceived to be somewhat successful, right? And there's this notion that when people go to these mission trips or go to these third world countries, they're there to, kind of like rock their ego a little bit, and they're there for the wrong reasons. Tell me a little bit about what I think with the intention of what people have when they do that versus the people that do it genuinely and actually leave an impact. Like what have you seen, and what do you think is the clear separator of those two groups of people?
You never know until you get over there. So I've got a great story. I took a youth group. This was 2006. I took an entire youth group over to Romania.
Okay.
We stayed in a gypsy village. We did all sorts of, inner city ministry over there. Well, we took the pastor's daughter. She won't mind me sharing this. I mean, she probably won't see this, but if she does, when we got there, she was 13 at the time. We get there, and one of the first things we did was these old block apartment buildings that were basically falling apart, just dirt everywhere. There's no roads, and these kids are just all dirty, muddy, and they're playing with our kids. Well, she was mortified. I mean, everybody's looking at her like, what is your problem? She's like, she was verbal about it. She's like, I hate it here. Like, it's dirty. These kids are gross. And we're all like, well, calm yourself down. Like, what in the world? What a spoiled brat. Yeah. So the greatest transformation I've ever seen on a mission trip was this girl, 13 years old, who started the trip like that. 10 days later, the day that we're leaving, she's bawling her eyes out that she does not want to leave. She doesn't want to leave her new friends. She made lifelong friendships, commitments to these people that she'll keep in touch on. It was night and day. And that's the power of a trip like that outside of your comfort zone. And you can equate that to business too. Some of the most successful business owners that I know are very keen to get outside of their comfort zone. They almost want to live there because they know that's where the power happens. That's where the transformation happens. Yeah. Sitting in our comfort zones, being comfortable is nice, but it's not everything. I don't know that I'll ever retire from doing what I'm doing because it's boring as all get out. I mean, I've had times where I wasn't working. I'm like, this is terrible. I was talking to a guy. I have a men's group coffee every Wednesday morning at 6:30. Meet with these guys at a coffee shop. And one of the guys just retired. He was a lineman, like electricity. He did that for years and years. And he's beside himself right now because he's lost part of his identity. I mean, that's a stressful thing. We think, oh man, you retired, you're just going to go sit on an island. That's fun for about 2 days. Day 3, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business person, you're going to be crawling out of your skin to go start another business. So you got to find what you love doing. And that old saying, when you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah. And I think that's a great transition statement to what I want to get into next. So corporate America, what does that word feel like?
That was most of until I was nearing 30, that was my life, most of it, because I grew up in corporate America with my dad working. He was president of Cash and Carry. That's a pretty big grocery chain down south. He was vice president of Food Line. He was COO of Dean and DeLuca in New York City. Had an amazing, I think the apartment he had in Manhattan before he had it, Ricky Lake, it had it. And the windows you see right to the Empire State Building, it was amazing. Very big shoes to fill for me growing up, why I never even tried to fill them. Like I went the ministry route, complete opposite. And then lo and behold, it's in my blood. It's in my DNA, business. And so ultimately I came back and now I get to, fund these trips. But, I was an executive with Target for years, and that I understand the corporate lifestyle as well as anyone, growing up in it and working at Target. And I'll never forget the day that I saw an ad to take a course to learn digital marketing. A light bulb went off. I'm like, I had kids at the time. I had 3 kids, and I'm thinking, I'm getting older. this job's super stressful. I watched the stress, the toll that it took on my dad at certain times in his life. And I'm like, I really, how did I get here? I'm thinking I was always going to do missions and ministry. And now I'm like right back into corporate America. And I'm like dug way deep into it. I'm there, I'm working 80-hour weeks. And I saw a way out with digital marketing. I didn't know if it would work. It was way out of my comfort zone. And I call it, I leaped before I looked. Yeah. I invested in this program and,
and we're going to get to that, this moment specifically, but I want to talk about the transformation that occurred, right? At some point, you consciously were like, this is not it. I can't do this the rest of my life. It's not going to give me the opportunity that I want. Talk to me about what those thoughts were like, right? You have, I'm assuming you're making pretty good money, right? At Target, like you could, take care of your family, but there wasn't more that you were looking for. Like, talk to me about that transformation.
It was a trade-off. It was time for money, and time is precious, especially when you're talking about family. You only get so much of it. And I'm very aware of that. A lot of people don't have the fortunate opportunity to work from home, to hang out with their family because they're still stuck in corporate America. Now, I don't begrudge working in corporate America at all, not for 1 second, because it allowed me to provide for my family. That's my role as husband and father. I chose this role, so I have to be responsible for that. So working was part of my identity, working long hours, working hard, right? I was doing it for my family. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of people out there doing a great job working in the blue collar work. But there was a time, a few years, where if my family wanted to see me, I was wearing red and khaki. I used to say I bleed red and khaki. Like that's how hardcore I was with Target. And I enjoyed working out, I enjoyed the team and everything, but like there was a separation between work and family, and work had the lion's share of my life. I mean, more than the lion's share. You look for a few years at any pictures of me with my family, I'm wearing red and khaki, whether they were at the store to visit me or whether I was at some event that I had to get to for family. I was wearing red and khaki because right before that event I was working, or right after that event I would need to go back to work. I did a lot of overnights. When you become an executive in any corporate job, all that means is you get paid a little bit more, but you get worked a whole lot more. So I would do overnights. I was, in charge of multiple teams at certain times where it was high stress. Good pay, definitely don't knock the pay. It was great. But, in digital marketing, just to kind of fast forward, I'll never forget there was a month where I hit the annual revenue in 1 month doing digital marketing, meaning what I used to make in a year at Target, I made in 1 month doing digital marketing, working probably 20% as much.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but before you jumped into digital marketing, you did not know digital marketing.
No, I knew it from the perspective of if you can put the right offer in front of the right person at the right time, they're going to buy.
So conceptually, the term of marketing you understood, but the nuances of actually marketing for someone was completely brand new to you.
Oh yeah, I had never heard the term funnel or lead generation, none of that.
Right. So this is a crucial point in your life, right? Because this was 5 years ago? Yes.
Yeah, just over 5 years ago.
So you had 3 kids at the time, married, had a stable, I guess you could say, job, but it was wearing you down. And you took a leap to learn a skill that you never knew previously.
Sure.
And start a business around that. That leap of faith, what are some things you learned about yourself in that process that other people could kind of fall back on as like, hey, he can do it, so can I. Like, talk about that a minute.
I've always been a risk taker. When I went to Africa, it was Tanzania. It's on the east coast. I went there to learn Swahili, and I knew nobody over there. I got a one-way ticket. It's a pretty big risk. I was 27 at the time. I played golf that morning with my brother and sister, and then I hopped a plane not knowing when I would come back. Ended up coming back 6 months later. Wild story. I had a buddy that that I met over there, and he and I were running this tour company. It was long. That's a story for another time. But
Okay.
he ended up, unfortunately, getting killed. He would sell tanzanite in London, and he would take these trips from Tanzania to London and sell all these precious stones, this tanzanite. And we don't know exactly what happened, but at a certain point, he got killed and robbed, and we got a call a couple weeks later, and that just kind of marred. Paradise was no longer paradise for me, so I came home and went back to work. But taking risks is getting out of your comfort zone. That's what's going to ultimately propel you forward. Getting in rooms and getting around people who are where you want to be in 3, 5, 10 years. That's also super important. So I was very fortunate to see an ad one day of this guy drawn on a whiteboard. And I don't know about anybody watching this, but typically you wait for the ad countdown to happen, then you skip the ad. Well, that day, for whatever reason, I didn't skip the ad. I kept watching. It could have been snake oil, could have been all this other stuff that's on the internet. There's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad. Well, I found the good, and the program at the time was called the Experts Academy. It's called Industry Marketing Academy now, but that taught me the basics of digital marketing, and I will be forever thankful for that course. It got me out of retail.
Shout out to Douglas James, right? Yeah, October 2018, right? That's when we both jumped into the same thing together. And, it's funny when you talk about taking risks. I'm not a big risk taker, I don't think. I'm very calculated, I think. But one thing that I do leverage is the idea of having mentors and being in proximity, right? Like that has always been a thing, whether that was for being on sports teams, trying to be around people that were better than me, early on in business, just trying to get around the conversation, right? You don't know what you don't know. You're kind of just throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks. And in October 2018, like you, I had literally $4,000 to my name. Literally. Okay. Yeah. I was 23 at the time. Okay. So I was working at a taco shop. I was working with my dad part-time. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go into this and try to learn the skill, right? The more skills you have, the more valuable you are, just how it is, right? Sure. So I started with the intention of I'm going to learn a skill. And then once I saw the blueprint for the business model, I said, well, this is something that I'm going to give a shot out, right? And what happened was, and what happens to so many people is I quit. So I learned it from October to roughly March. I was learning this. I tried it and I failed miserably. I didn't know what I was doing. The prospecting wasn't working. The lead generation, when I got someone on the hook, wasn't working. My funnels were crappy, right? So I stopped. I was like, this ain't for me. And so I went back and I started my now father-in-law started doing medical sales at his company. And I was like, I'm good at sales. All right, I'm learning this. That's great. That's a skill, right? So now I have 2 skills, digital marketing and sales. And then I was like, this still ain't it. I'm not fulfilled. I'm not doing, I know that I can do this. So I circled back. I think this was like June of 2019 now. And I was like, I'm going to go for it. I'm done. I'm going for this. And I just went all in. And I remember telling my now wife, I was like, I'm going to be a business owner. I don't know what this looks like. You're just going to have to ride with me. Like you're going to have to, there's no vacations. There's no, I'm going to be missing hanging out with friends, family. I'm going to do it. I'm doing this. And, it's funny because a lot of our friends were not entrepreneurs. Many of them just work corporate jobs. So that the idea of starting a business, there was a lot of skepticism with my own girlfriend at the time. And my family, they were like, what is this? Like, you're watching these YouTube videos and you're on your computer. Like, what are you doing? Like, are you gambling or like, what's happening? Right. And so I think it took, and for a while, I didn't really know. I was like, what is this going to be? Because if I fall on my face, now I potentially will be 25, 26 with nothing. I'm just like, shit, out of luck. So I think it gave me this like back against the wall mentality. And I was like, I got to get in proximity to people that are learning this stuff. That's why you and I started talking. Shout out to Johnny Vo, right? He was someone that kind of came in at the same time. So I started seeing your guys' success, and I was like, all right, there's people doing this. Let me just, bunker down. And so that really was a big step for me. And then, and I want to talk about coaching in a second, but my big break was something that taught me a lesson that I think a lot of people need to know. When you have an opportunity, right, and you persevere and you push through and you start to see some success, there's layers, there's levels, right, to it. And the only way to get to the next level is to put yourself in proximity and put yourself out there. Okay, if you don't, I tell people, if you don't ask for the raise, you're never going to get the raise, right? There's just, you have to level up. So what I did when I started to have some success as a marketer, I had an interview, right, with Douglas James, and he was asking me about my experience and yada yada. You had the same interview, and I told him, I said, my passion is not marketing. My passion is helping others. And he goes, great. Let's develop a coaching program where you can teach other people how to do coaching. That's how it started. And I was 24 years old, and I still remember this. I was making, roughly $10,000 to $12,000 a month, which for a kid in Buffalo, New York, at 24 years old, that was a shit ton of money. Right? I was balling. Okay, but I knew that to make an impact, I needed to double down. And so when I started coaching, yes, more money came, which was great, but it also gave me a different perspective. Because now I was helping people that wanted to get to where I was. And in the back of my mind, I wanted to get where maybe Douglas was or another high-performing person. So there's levels that always keeps you motivated for higher, but also humble enough that you can help other people. And I think that's something that is really important. So for you, you've mentioned so many times that coaching, you're so passionate about it. Why is coaching a passion of yours? What about it makes you go?
Because I can relate to people I am coaching. I can relate very well because many of them are coming from corporate America, trying to get out, trying to find a better opportunity for themselves and their families. I mean, I know exactly what that feels like. So I can help them. I don't just coach. That saying, people who don't do teach. Well, I have clients. Like my majority of my time is spent on client work. And then the other half is spent coaching people on how to do this work. So I'm constantly in the field, like learning new skills because it's helping my clients. And I can turn right around and I can teach people the most relevant things. And I can also help them where they are at any level. Now, I can't teach somebody how to make $1 million a month because I've never been there myself, right? But I can definitely teach people how to get up to that point. And I can help clients easily make $1 million a month. Like that's not a problem, but they already have all these different mechanisms in place. These people that I'm teaching, they're like us when we started. They don't know hardly anything about digital marketing. They've never heard the word funnel. So I get to teach them from the ground up. And I know you know this. We talk about this a lot. 80% of it is right up here. 20% of it is the skills and the tools that we use. Man, mindset.
I can't emphasize this enough, man. Thank you for bringing that because I wanted to kind of shed some light on where you're going here. Like, I've had dinners, I've gone on vacations, I've spoken to, I've gone to events, right? I've met some pretty high-performing people in my day. But at the end of the day, what I found is there's nothing special about them, really, outside of up here, Like for us, I tell people all the time, there's a very distinct difference between those of people that are successful and make an impact and can change, their family, dynamic or whatever, impact other people for future generations, perhaps. And there's people that just don't ever reach their potential, right? And I think there's three things that tie into this, Evan, and feel free to chime in. But there's three words that come to mind. The first one is persistence, right? And that was something that I just alluded to that I initially didn't have, right? I didn't have that persistence, right? You're going to fail. People are going to doubt you. You're going to be stressed to no end, right? It's your ability, right, to push past that. And that's what hard feels like. right? But also when things are difficult and you persist past them, greatness potentially could be on the other side, right? The second word that comes to mind is choices, right? Is choices. And it's like you have a choice on a Saturday and Sunday night to go out to the bar and drink with your friends, or you go bunker down at home and, maybe you and your wife are having a glass of wine, but you're on the computer and learning a skill, right? Or, whether or not you're going to go take those extra, sales calls to try to get ahead for the next month's, certain KPIs, right? Like those are choices you have to make in not only business, but in life. Like, am I going to save money? Like I'm not a big advocate of, saving money, but the concept rings true. It's like, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, okay, I know I'm getting paid on Friday, but Thursday night I'm going to go out. I'm going to spend this money because I know I'm getting paid tomorrow. Like, is that the responsible thing to do? It's probably not, right? And so when we have choices, that kind of is our driver. And the third one is fear, right? Fear. And you alluded to some of that. You're a risk taker, but fear is just, it's an emotion, right? It's emotion that I think everyone has to some degree, but it's a belief, right? It's a belief. And I think emotions can be changed, right? And when you start to have small wins, right? Small wins kind of lead to confidence, right? And confidence and the way we show up in a confident way makes us almost feel like invincible or like hero-like. And I think when you can hone that and maximize things, you become like a go-getter, right? You don't know what things look like, nor do you care. You're just going to go for it. And like, that's what I see in high-performing people constantly is they just don't, they can control the fear aspect. And when they have the fear, they persist past it. And when they're faced with a choice or decision to make to move forward, or they usually pick the right choice, right? And that's a clear distinction from us when we've been coaching students, but also in our business consulting and things of that nature. Like those are the three factors I think drive a lot of high performance.
For sure.
Could you could probably speak on some of that too.
Absolutely. There's different levels of this game and there's different levels of fear. The first fear that you probably are going to have doing this business is fear of man, fear of what people will say. Well, you got to put yourself in front of that fear. The quicker, the better, because what I see happen is people let that fear dictate their actions and eventually they quit. Whereas me on day 4, after jumping into the program 5 years ago, I had a fire hose of information. On day 4, I walk out of my store, still in my full retail garb. I walk into a CrossFit gym. I just got lucky. I mean, that's all I can say. God thing, I got lucky. This guy, the owner, I didn't know this guy. He's sweeping the floors up in between classes. He was the only person in the building, happened to be the business owner, happened to be the decision maker. And I just said, hey, I can fill I didn't even introduce myself. I just started yelling and it kind of scared him a little bit. I said, hey, I can fill this place with new members. If you got 5 minutes, I'll tell you how. He looked at me. He's like, let's go in my office. So we go in his office. I asked him for a piece of paper and a pen. This guy just walking in here. And I drew out the best version, first one ever, of a funnel. And I'm just talking to him about everything I learned over the past 4 days, right? Like, I'm going to help blow up your CrossFit gym. And so we get to the end and he looked at me. He's like, he's like, I don't understand a lot about what you just said. And instantly I was like, oh crap, what just happened? And then he said, but you're clearly passionate about this. So let's give it a shot. Let's do it. I got my first client on day 4. It blew my mind because it showed me they're just people. Like you said, all these millionaires, these billionaires, they're just people. They struggle with the same crap we struggle with. And so when you talk to these business owners, a lot of times a fear is, well, they're a business owner. I mean, I got news for you. If you're starting a digital marketing agency, you're a business owner. You own a business. It's no difference. And so that's that first level. And then there's other levels that you get it to. But you said something, persistence. There's a book that I know you're aware of. It is Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. It's a very strange name. But one of the secrets in this book is persist until you succeed. It's a great sales training.
Yeah. I want to talk about your growth for a minute, right? Going from, a student to starting a business, having some success, taking your digital marketing agency, and now you've niched down a little bit to a specific group of people. talk about your subject matter expert academy a little bit and how you're impacting and helping businesses thrive.
Absolutely. So I started off same way as you in the small business brick and mortar space, service-based businesses, CrossFit gyms, chiropractors, nail salons, that world, which is great. You can do lead generation and you can get into that. But and I was happy to do it. When I got into chiropractors as a niche, I loved it. I love the chiropractors that I work with. I still talk to them. It's been a few years now because one day I'm in this Facebook group and I see a post from this guy. He says, we need someone to help us build a funnel to sell our stock trading course for Black Friday. And I looked at that and my head almost exploded. When I was 5, 6 years old, my grandfather, who I call Pop-Op, he would always write these little notes with these symbols on it, these words that weren't really words to me. And he would say, go and find the price of these and write down the number.
From the ticker.
The tickers on the bottom of the television screen, he was trading stocks, but his eyesight was failing him, so he couldn't see the ticker tape as well. So I'm sitting there as a little kid, not knowing what the heck I'm doing, just waiting till I see IBM, waiting till I see Ford, and then I write down the price. Ever since then, I was in love with the stock market, right? When I turned 18, I opened my first trading account with Scottrade. I don't even know if they're around anymore, and I lost everything. I was working in a movie theater at the time. And so every paycheck, that was the most fun job on the planet. You guys want a fun job go to a movie theater. It doesn't pay well, but all my paychecks went into my trading account and I would lose it every time, happy as can be, because I love trading. Well, fast forward to when I'm doing this and I saw that post, I'm like, I jumped in, no fear, right? I get into this guy's DM and I said, I can definitely help you with this. Let's jump on a call. So we jump on a call. I do the same funnel out that I drew for the CrossFit guy. This was probably, 6 months later. And he's like, man, he kind of said the same thing. He's like, well, I don't know if this is going to work or not, man. He's like, but you're excited about it. Let's do it. We're going to give you some money, put into the ad spend. Let's see what you do. Well, they gave me $500 for ad spend just to see. I think they were probably testing out other marketers as well. So yeah. I took that 500 and then I just sat back for a couple of days, didn't do anything. I just thought, I'm like, okay, I like trading stocks. I know what it's like to fail at trading stocks. I know the pain points in this industry. I'm going to write this ad copy. I'm going to write the copy on the landing page. I'm going to write this email sequence to me, a younger version of me. So that's what I did. And we turned 500 into 8,000 over the course of 2 weeks. And so I didn't know if that was great. If it wasn't great, I'm like, wow, I was like, whatever that 20X return or something. And so I get on a call with him. He's like, hey, it's like, nice job. Would you like something more full time with us? And in my head, I was like, heck yeah, I would do this for free. But I didn't say that for sure. I was like, yeah, I would love to discuss that opportunity. And so we get into this, we negotiate, and I negotiated that I would do all of the work because they had a huge following. I still work with this team. They had a huge following online. So I said, I'll do it for free. You don't have to pay me a retainer, nothing. I just want 30% of anything that I sell with my marketing. They'll say, yeah, sure, that's fine. So, got everything going, built it up. First month I'm working with them, they send me a check for $17,000. That was my commission that month. And I'm thinking,
that's always a good feeling.
I'm thinking, this is life now. I've just new normalized. Let me go buy my Ferrari. Let me do all this stuff. So then a couple of days later, the founder, the CEO calls me. He's like, hey, Evan, man, appreciate you, your work. Glad to have you on the team. We can't keep paying you $17,000 a month. And I'm like, whoa, time out. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, we looked at the numbers. He's like, you're doing great, but 30% is just a little bit much. And so we negotiated down, and that was slowly teaching me that there's other marketing opportunities out there aside from brick and mortar businesses. And so sure. I took that lesson and I took all of that design work and the funnel strategy and everything that we were coming up with. And I went to another trader because I love that niche and I could obviously do it well. So I went to, because I was passionate about that. That's very important. If you're passionate about it, it doesn't feel like work, sure. And you're going to do a great job. So I went to this other trader, options trader, and he did not have a following online, very small following online, but he was a great trader. I knew, and he was charismatic. I'm like, this guy could blow up. I was like, I can help this person. So I then took another trader. Over the course of about 18 months, we basically went from $0 to $200,000 months. And wow. It worked the same way as the other one. It just took longer to build that audience up. So now I'm like, okay, now I know this works. And so I went and got another trader, did the same thing. Then I started wanting to challenge myself. I'm like, I wonder if this will work for other industries. Will it only work for trading? And so I partnered up with another agency who had a client who was helping people sell Airbnb. He was basically teaching people how to run an Airbnb business. And I'm like, this guy's really good. And he's got a huge following and he's not monetizing. What I found was I call them subject matter experts. There's people all over the internet that have millions of followers that are content with just the AdSense revenue that they're getting from Google. It might be 10, 15, 20K a month. And they've never made that. I mean, they've come from all different walks of life. And now they're just talking about something they love on the internet and they're getting paid for it. And they're like, this is great. And I'm like, you're missing the bigger picture here. You're leaving so much money on the table. So I help them productize what they do. I help them monetize a little bit better. I help them make millions of dollars. We took one particular client who was just making AdSense money. And then the thing that he was teaching, he was doing himself. So he also had revenue on the side here. We took a webinar and in 2 weeks' time made $1.6 million, driving it to the same people that he was having as followers.
Yeah, that's a good number.
Blew my mind.
It's interesting, right? You've identified some parts of the market where you can optimize and formulate a solution or a business model around that, and it's super valuable.
I'll share this real quick.
Yeah,
that client, I was helping somebody else. This is kind of what got me into coaching, because I taught somebody else how to build that funnel for that webinar, and that team, the commission on that was $90,000. And so that was really my first coaching experience, was helping somebody make $90,000 in 1 month, really 2 weeks time. Yeah. So that I'm like, wow,
it's crazy. Like, think 5 years ago, right? Like $90,000 in a month seemed like it doesn't exist. Right. Like it's not even possible. Your perspective and talk about levels, right? We've talked about levels throughout this call. Is like at a certain point, yeah, money's great, of course, but you want to impact, right? And all of this is a driving force for you to go do the mission trips, right? And leave a bigger impact and leave a legacy for you and your family. Sure. So I want to transition real quick into kind of we're getting towards the end here. What is the next big thing or initiative that Evan Dawson's going to be working on?
Well, UDevelop, as you're well aware, is a company who are going to help businesses scale to that next level using all of our combined efforts and experience, and do it in a way that speaks to their values that are going to help them make an impact on the world the way that they want to make an impact. So I'm extremely excited about that opportunity.
I'm glad you mentioned that, right? You being a part of that mission is going to be we're going to impact so many people, working with these right businesses that are about the right things, right? I want to surround myself. I want to get away from maybe the marketing for chiropractors to actually working with companies that are doing impactful work in the communities and in our country and even globally, right? And having you a part of that is a huge blessing for me, and I'm excited for what's to come. So as we wrap up, Evan, I want to give you a few moments. If there's anything that's on your heart that you want to leave a message for the audience or a community or a group of people, business, personal, either way, I'll let you have the floor.
We kind of touched on it multiple times in this interview. Do the thing that you're passionate about. Do the thing that when you go on vacation, you're still thinking about that thing. Okay. Now, if you're not an entrepreneur, you might not have that itch. Okay. It might be something different for you. It might be family. It might be raising your kids right. That's a great calling. But some of you that are watching this, there's something inside you that you want to get to that next level. You're not really sure how to do it, but you're going to need to take a risk at some point. You're going to need to go all in, and you're going to need to persist until you succeed. And money can't be the driving factor. I'll say that I've made that mistake. I've chosen niches before. I'm like, I can make good money with this niche, but I could care less about the niche. Well, it doesn't work that way, because money can only solve money problems. You've probably heard that before. Once you have all of your bills, all your normal stuff taken care of, once you buy the cool car, once you buy you go on the fancy vacation stuff, you're still going to come back to your office and you're going to be sitting there. Is what you're doing scratching that itch for whatever your passions in life are? Are you making an impact around you for other people? Because this is what I see happen. Some people that are just chasing money, they get to that point and they lose steam. It's like, wow, shoot, I don't have any money worries right now. This is kind of weird. Now I'm bored. Now I'm complacent. Okay, let me sidestep and let me maybe do some real estate. Well, if you think about it, they're getting into another category and they're going to get in there and do great, but all that's going to do is give them more money. It's the same problem. Like if you're not making an impact, doing something that you're passionate about, it's pretty much, it turns into worthlessness. And also teaching your kids, circling back to the very beginning, showing your kids what it looks like to be not just a responsible adult, but somebody who gives back, somebody who does things because they're passionate about their work and they're making an impact in other people's lives. I don't always get it right. I have ups and downs here, but like that's my goal. My goal is that my immediate family sees me working hard for them and then helping other people. In a microcosm, that's what we're going to do by fostering kids. Our kids are going to see the dynamic in our family change for the sole reason that we want to impact other kids' lives and be a benefit to them. So that is going to be tremendous for them. And then getting them on the mission field, in my head, is just the ultimate goal.
Yeah, man, that was so beautifully said. The Impact Meets Innovation podcast, I created it for a purpose of having people have a different perspective to how different people go about leaving an impact, right? Impact can look different to a lot of people. And the purpose of this podcast was to give people an inside look into how you're going about it, how our other guests are going about it. And so I'll kind of end the podcast on this note. We all have an opportunity every single day, right? And I don't want to give a rah-rah speech here, but what I'm saying is we all have an opportunity. And you have an opportunity to create your own deck, right? We've heard this terminology before. Create your own deck. And when I say create your own deck, that means maybe stepping outside of your comfort zone, challenging yourself, challenging your belief system, challenging the people you hang around, building and thinking, how can I level up in some capacity? Maybe that's going to the gym every day and getting into the best shape of your life. Maybe that's finding God and going to church every day. Maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's getting out of corporate America and finding more work-life balance. Whatever that may be for you, creating an opportunity for yourself, create your own deck. And then through that, you're going to become the best version of yourselves. And I believe that when you do that, the people you love most are going to feel that. You're going to cement your legacy. And really, you're going to spend your entire life emptying your tank trying to impact others. And I think the more people that do that, this world is a better place. So, Evan, thanks, my brother. This was a tremendous episode. It was great hearing your story from corporate America, talking about your family, the whole 9 yards, man. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thanks, Chris. Been great.